This video seeks to dispel several untruths, exaggerations, and outright lies regarding the system of slavery that actually began in the early 1500s, roughly around 1523 to 1526, off of the eastern coast of Georgia on an island that is now called Sapelo Island, Sapelo Sound, by Spanish explorers who already owned sugar plantations on the island of Hispaniola, as it was called back then, but what is now the island of Haiti and Dominican Republic. You know, the two countries separated by I guess a line that they agreed on. But what I want to talk about is something that common sense demands. There are countless charcoal engravings, paintings, if you will, that those artists, or those you can't say painters and engravers, they engraved what they saw, what was going on in front of them with the slave trade. We've seen, I'm sure everyone has seen from school, the drawings they had of the slave ships, the galleons, from the English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, the four major slave trading countries, or rather who established it, the Spanish actually. But I ask some very simple questions that modern day life has already answered for me. And I ask, how did slavery get started? What kind of men would accept slavery as a way of life, to be used and abused, exploited by strange foreign men, essentially turned into male prostitutes to make money off of? What kind of a man does that? What kind of man does it take to accept that way of life? To allow strange foreign men to control the most intimate aspects of their lives, what they ate, when they slept, when they woke up, how they lived, where they lived. To allow strange foreign men to control the most intimate aspects of your life as a man. And again, I want to say these were strange foreign men that they knew nothing about, that they could not understand. They spoke no European languages, of course, right? And finally, worst of all, in being transported from West Africa to the quote unquote New World, they didn't even know where they were going. These black Africans, so I'll say again, to put themselves into a situation to make themselves wards to strange foreign men they knew nothing about, they could not understand, and worst of all, is, in my opinion, they did not even know where they were going. What kind of a man puts himself into that situation? Now, some of you say, "Oh, well, they chained them up. They couldn't go anywhere." There are countless of these charcoal engravings, which I'm showing you right now on this video. The black Africans are at complete liberty. They're not chained up. There's no bindings, cudgels, chains, nothing. They were at complete liberty. And so you now have to ask the question, what kind of man would tolerate this? It demands it, because some of you all initially will say, well, that was a long time ago. People were different. Well, no, because if that were the case, all people would have done the same thing. So let us not jump all people into the same behavior when in fact that's completely inaccurate. You had countries and cultures who were smart, who had established written languages. They were navigators. They had by that time, they had a very established understanding of navigation, travel, be it on boats, wind-powered boats, but they knew how to get where they needed to go. These were men who would not tolerate being slaves, particularly to strange men. To allow strange foreign men to enter their land, be taken to places unknown by men they couldn't even talk to. So no, let's drop that thing. Well, everybody, it was a long time ago and that's how people were. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, we have countless examples of, for example, in Spain, where the Ottoman Empire had conquered parts of Spain. That conquest ended in, from my understanding, the early 1400s or mid 1400s. The Spanish found Ottoman rule or Muslim rule unacceptable. They refused to have foreign, strange men in control of their destiny and their lives, and so they ultimately removed those Muslims, the Ottomans, from their country. They were pretty much all gone by the mid 1400s. So that in of itself, that example, which is known to most people, historians, they did not accept slavery or allow themselves to be enslaved and controlled by foreign men. Black Africans, however, took to this immediately. They seemed to be comfortable. They seemed to, they were quite comfortable in being controlled and dominated by strange foreign men. A lot of people, most people have not asked the question, well, what kind of a man tolerates that? Again, strange men going strange places, not even knowing where you're going. This is the behavior of animals, of horses, dogs, cattle. It's the behavior of animals to have yourself packed and shipped all over the world by people you can't understand and you don't even know where you're going. That's what animals do. And it's the same thing those Black Africans did. And so now we must redirect our attention to the Black African. What kind of a man does that? What kind of a man tolerates that? The Spanish didn't tolerate that. The English didn't tolerate that with the Roman Empire. They kicked the Romans out. All of those countries where you have these, well, not all of these countries, but a lot of these countries where you have these foreign invaders trying to establish rule, they kick them out. And I said before, the example with the Spanish is one of the biggest ones. They had enough of the Muslim rule. They were not tolerating that. And so we now, as I said before, must focus back on the black African. What kind of a man tolerates being dominated and ruled by strange foreign men that he couldn't even understand or talk to put himself in harm's way, for his women and children to be put in harm's way? The question must be asked, what kind of a man does that? This is what I say. Homosexuality played a much more significant role in the black slave trade that I believe has not been discussed. Because fast forwarding to the modern day, I counsel LGBT people. You can say that I'm a social worker, counselor. And so I counsel these individuals. I've had to tell some of these men they've been assaulted, attacked, robbed, victims of crime from strange, random men that they allow into their living spaces, their houses, apartments. I had to go to the home of one gentleman who was beaten by someone. There was no sign of forced entry. We had the police and everything involved, and so we interview the victim and go through that process, and in tandem with law enforcement. But I asked a question because myself, law enforcement, there was no, again, forced entry, no broken windows, no broken door frames. This person was allowed into his apartment. I said, well, who was he? The victim, he's a gay man, a homosexual man. And so I proceeded to ask him, well, who was this guy? Was he a friend? Was he a partner of yours? Who was he? And ultimately, we got to the bottom of the fact that this was a complete stranger that he allowed into his apartment. And when that stranger came in, what had happened, it was supposed to be a sexual liaison between himself and this gentleman. And the gentleman ultimately robbed him, beat him, and left him in a pretty bad state. And you say, why do you bring this up? What does it have to do with slavery? But what I want to make the correlation with, and this is not hate toward LGBT at all. This is not, I'm just pointing out facts and the correlation of similar behavior in the fact that you have a man who puts himself in harm's way to be in the company of another strange man that he knows nothing about, that he has no relationship with, he has no prior experience with, or any kind of communication. This is a complete stranger who he is allowed to come in and basically violate him in countless ways. Well, I won't get into the details, but anyway, it was a pretty bad scene. But what I am saying is that the parallels to me are clear, be it 1523 or 2023. You have men who allow themselves to be violated, used and abused by strange men they know nothing about, they have no relationship with. There's been instances where they've allowed Hispanic, I've seen it, I mean, and I'm here in the United States, mind you, let me make that clear. I'm a counselor here in the United, working here in the United States, but I have had situations where other gentlemen have allowed some of these undocumented or these illegal immigrants to come into their homes for sexual liaisons, not knowing any Spanish, and it's been Spanish for the most part, but they've allowed these men into their homes, not even speaking, any Spanish at all. They couldn't even really understand him. They didn't care to understand him. Their main focus was the sexual activity that he assumed was going to take place with this strange, complete stranger. And so that takes me back to the establishment of the black slavery and those black Africans who tolerated that. I say there is very strong evidence of homosexuality in these men who, in fact, look forward to be dominated and controlled by other men. I have to say this. A lot of gay men, not all, but for a lot of gay men, it's a fantasy. They're aroused by it. It's a fantasy to be dominated and controlled by another man. He wants to be in a certain position while the man is in another position, and it's a sexual thing. They're aroused by it. The man, quote unquote, having his way with me, doing whatever he wants to do. It's a sexual thing for these men, and that's not hate. And I did not say all gay men were like that. I did not say that, but I know for a fact, in me counseling and talking to these men, it's a sexual situation for them to be controlled and dominated by other men. This is exactly what happened during the black slavery situation. Those black Africans allowed themselves to be controlled and dominated by strange foreign white men they knew nothing about. As I said before, they knew nothing about, they couldn't understand, and didn't even know where they were going. And from my own opinion, and this is going to anger some people, as I said before, it's the behavior of animals, not of modern humans. It was an animal stupidity. These were grown men. Okay, before that's another thing people want to say, well, they must have kidnapped all children. No, they did not. And everyone who has lived in the United States, went to school, they didn't kidnap a bunch of children. Because then, not only does the evidence not support that, the clear evidence, even if it did happen, the first thing I want to ask is, okay, well, what happened to the parents? When those whites entered into West Africa, particularly when it first began, they were not well armed. They were clearly outnumbered by far. And so this was not a situation of military dominance or they having superior firepower. None of that. Now you say, okay, we know that the African chiefs sold them into slavery. But again, that question doesn't go away. What kind of a man tolerates that? They were not chained up, for the most part, they were not chained up and bonded up. They were at complete liberty, on these ships. A lot of times, not in the hold of the ships, they were on the decks. They were on the decks of these ships in complete liberty, not chained up or locked up. And so they made a decision to get on those boats. They made a choice. They wanted them healthy. They didn't want them injured, and so the whites were not looking to attack them or injure them. They wanted them healthy. The fact is, they were so comfortable, and those black Africans complying with that whole situation, by and large, their weapons or swords and knives and whatnot, that was the extent of it. That was it. And so I put things together as far as then and now, and I see the same behavior. I've seen the same behaviors. Men wanted to be controlled and dominated by other men. It's sexual. They get aroused by it. And so I say homosexuality played a much more significant role in the slave trade. Let's also talk about the black woman. As we all know, that black women also accompanied these men on the so-called painful voyage from West Africa to the quote New World. It's a question of the same. What kind of a man tolerates his women and children being assaulted and accosted by strange foreign men to do whatever he wants to do with them? As we know, black African women faced physical assault and sexual assault a lot of times on a daily basis. That's fact. They face brutal physical assault, sexual assault on a daily basis. In this modern day, when you see all these what they used to call mulatto Negroes, light-skinned and multicolored Negroes, those black Africans were all dark-skinned when they came here. All of them. I've not seen any recorded documentation, be it engravings, paintings, anything showing any light-skinned Africans coming here. They were all dark-skinned. So naturally you say, well, wow, how do we get all these multicolored blacks here? The light skin and everything else? Well, you have your answer. Rape not only was accepted of black African women, it was common. And it went on for hundreds of years, beginning, I say, in the 1500s, as I said, when the first black Africans came here. It happened regularly. The black African man, what was he doing? Nowhere to be found. And I say the black African likely was jealous of the black African woman because he wanted to be violated and dominated by these white men. I say it's possible these black Africans had a fetish for white men, which allowed them being dominated and whipped and controlled. They were aroused by it and they enjoyed it. It was a sexual thing. Because I would not like to think that men would be so stupid, men would be so stupid as to put themselves in harm's way like that with the whole African slavery thing. I would not like to think that. I would like to think that, and evidence points me to, from what I can see, what I've dealt with right now in this modern world, these were gay men. These were gay men who wanted to be violated, who wanted to be dominated, who wanted to be controlled by other men. I know that the gay men that I've counseled, LGBT, they made it clear, random men. I had one, he had on his social media when we were investigating this one situation that we looked on his Twitter account, and I'll quote you what he had on his Twitter. This is another one who had gotten attacked from, I guess, what was supposed to be a sexual liaison from one of the gay apps that are on the phones right now that they use. But quote on his Twitter account, "Is it so wrong to want a partner who will just lay down with you all day long and take blank from random men?" I'm not going to tell you what blank is. It's a little much. But I'll repeat that. Is it so wrong to want a partner who will just lay down with you all day long and take blank from random men? This is a gay man who I had to counsel. He had been attacked from one of these sexual liaisons with these random men that he would meet off these apps. And so, why do I bring that up? It's the exact same behavior that occurred 400 or 500 years ago with these black African men wanting to be dominated and controlled by random men. Keyword random, because they were exactly that. I'll repeat it once again. They had no idea who these men were. They could not understand the word they were saying. And worst of all, they didn't even know where they were going. And that's what really angers me. Not say really angers me. No, that's what really bothers me. What kind of a man does that? Puts himself in harm's way, puts his women and children in harm's way. You didn't even know where he was going. That's not human behavior. That's what animals do. Horses, dogs, and cattle. And so the black man, this is very controversial, but I will say it. I think the black man owes not only black women, black children, and black culture an apology. An apology for the refusal to respect yourself, respect your women and children, and respect your culture. Because guys, in this world demands men behaving like men. Okay. Did we understand that? This world demands that men behave like men, because in the absence of that, the culture is destroyed. The culture is destroyed. Just everything is gone. The women and children are destroyed, violated, expunged, exploited, because you have men who either refuse to or can't behave like men. Natural men. Not men that want to be dominated and controlled by random foreign men. Basically wanting to play the role of a female to live out a sexual fantasy. I mean, that's unfortunate, and that's what happened with the black African. He didn't care about himself or his women and children, the culture. No, he cared about other things. Sexual in nature. He wanted to serve other men and be under other men, and he wanted to be a ward under strange foreign men, and that's very unfortunate. And that's why black Africans all throughout the world, North America, Central America, South America, they are synonymous with struggle, poverty, problems. No matter where you go in the West, when you have lots of blacks, be it Brazil, the ghettos all throughout what is now the United States, where blacks live, the descendants of those men, what do you see? Crime, chaos, poverty, misery, problems. In Brazil, and some of you all don't know, they live in they live in what's called the favelas. These are basically just shanty towns, shack towns. They live in filth and some very horrific conditions. They actually shoot and kill their children, those black children in Brazil, in those slums, Rio de Janeiro. They shoot and kill them. There is no hope for them. There was a film that came out back in the 1990s, if I can recall, Ciudad de Zeus, and where it showed the reality of how a city of God in Portuguese, but that film highlighted how the descendants of those black Africans brought to Brazil, and highlighted how they live in modern Brazil. They live in horrific conditions. Why? Because those black African men had no standards, had no principles. There was nothing. They had no standards. They had no principles. It was bad. But essentially, these black men chose to be male prostitutes, and in effect were turned into male prostitutes by these Europeans. They were turned into male prostitutes, being pimped out, used up, swapped out from plantation to plantation, from Central America, Cuba, Haiti, to all throughout North America, which we all know. South America, same thing played out. The French, Spanish, Portuguese, English, they were competing against each other about how much wealth they could accumulate, how much money they could make. Black Africans, they became fabulously wealthy. Not only the individual people, but their countries. All behind men who refused to behave like men or could not behave like men. It's unnatural. And as I said before, I say these black men deserve, black women deserve an apology from these black men. Black women in particular deserve an apology because he has failed you in every way that it's important. He's failed you, the children, and his culture, which is why you struggle, that yet blacks are synonymous with poverty and crime. It's because of his decisions and his choices. He chose to be under strange foreign white men and be dominated and controlled by strange foreign white men. And I say these men were homosexuals. It's the only logical conclusion that I can come to, because the parallels between what I see now as a counselor and what was going on back then are exact. They're perfect. It's an exact match. Gay men who want to be violated, dominated, and controlled by strange men who they allow into their lives, into their private, personal situations. It's the exact as those same black Africans who put themselves into harm's way, put their women and their children into harm's way, where the women are being violated a lot of times on a daily basis. As I said before, physical assault, sexual assault. The women had to become like men to protect themselves. Some people you'll have talk about black women being too aggressive. Oh, she's not feminine enough. What do you think? That's how black women survived, because they had no men protecting them. She had to become hard like a man because she had no men protecting her. He was too busy on his knees out in the field with the overseer. And I'm not going to mention what he was doing on his knees. Use your imagination. He's behind the shed somewhere with the plantation owner. But I will say, gay men fantasize about being dominated and controlled and used and abused by all kinds of random men. That's fact. That's not hate. Not all gay men. I'm going to make that perfectly clear, but there's a lot of gay men who look forward to that scenario. It's a fantasy. They're aroused by it. And that's just fact. I've had to counsel people about this. I've tried to tell them, hey, you may want to change your behavior. I never condemn. And I understand, it's something that, it's biological or whatnot, but I would only, and I can only strongly advise against not allowing these strange men into your apartment, your house, because things can go south very quickly. And they have gone south. Some of these men have been murdered by complete strangers they've allowed into their homes. There's plenty of examples of that. Just Google it. You can see, you Google gay app murders. And you say, well, oh man, is he hatred toward LGBTs? No, I've not said one. All I'm doing is discussing facts that I've personally experienced and counseled people on. This is not, there's no hate. I'm discussing facts that I've personally witnessed myself. And so I want to say to black women around the world that your men have failed you. Let's even go to the African countries right now, 2024, and how they live. You see massive, crippling corruption. You see primitive cultures where they had the Ebola outbreak that happened back in 2014, 2015 in Africa. And PBS presented this special, I forget what it's called, PBS Newsline or forget, but anyway, where they talked about the Ebola epidemic. And you had a situation, this is 2014, mind you, where in this one African city, they were running around barefoot in other people's blood. There was an Ebola hospital where they had set up where the deceased, I guess they had left bodily fluids. And there is a video where these black Africans, this is again, when I'll put a link in this video, but if you were to watch that, you would think that video was 200-300 years ago, where people had very limited knowledge of microbiology, bacteria, how diseases, you would think this was 250 plus years ago. No, this is 2014. You see these chaos countries, chaos governments, failed states. A lot of these places are what? They're black African. They're black. That's just fact. Now you say, oh, he doesn't like blacks. He's he's racist toward blacks. I mean, folks, I'm talking facts. I'm not, I'm presenting you with pictures and videos. You can see it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. But again, what I'm getting ultimately, what I'm bringing out is you have men who have failed themselves, their culture, their women and children, and that needs to be called out. Black Africa, per square mile, is the most resource-rich continent in the world, by far. Nearly all the European countries have set up stakes there to extract what they need out of Africa. And how do the black Africans live? The majority of them? Abject poverty, barefoot, no health care. You have the elite in Africa living very well. And mind you, do you not realize in these African countries, the leaders, they send their kids to school overseas. They educate they get their health care overseas because they don't trust health care in their own African countries. Isn't that ridiculous? It lets you know how little respect he has for himself, his culture, where he won't even get health care within his own borders. He'll fly overseas, educate his children overseas, because he trusts none of the most vital entities in his own country, healthcare and education. The African leader doesn't trust it. And so he educates his kids overseas. So again, he doesn't respect, to this modern day, the black African doesn't respect himself. He doesn't respect his culture. He doesn't respect his country. He's allowed hostile foreigners, most of them European, but it's also include Arabic countries, doesn't matter. But he's allowed a lot of times hostile foreigners who don't want blacks in their countries to come in, extract what they need, and pay him pennies on the dollar. This is for me. This is not only about manhood. This is intelligence. Because that's very stupid behavior. It's very stupid behavior. And like I said, I've not wanted to use that word, but this has been going on since slavery, the 1500s. Why would you get on a boat with strange men going strange places, not even knowing where you're going? And you can't even talk to the men you're going with because you don't understand the word they're saying. You don't speak French, Spanish, English, or Portuguese. So I don't know where you don't know where you're going, and you don't know who you're going with. And yet you went anyway. That's not the behavior of humans, ladies and gentlemen. As I said before, that's the behavior of animals. So anyway, as I said before, it is my contention and my absolute confidence that homosexuality, I don't want to think that people can be, again, it's a harsh word, but stupid like animals. I want to give, and I believe homosexuality also played a role in the condition that, and what happened, for several hundred years with the whole black African slave trade that went on from the 1500s up into the late 1800s. And the after effects of those, the descendants of those people, how they live in these countries. Poverty, chaos, crime, mayhem. It's sad. And so that's it for now. I am not going to put my name out because, as I said before, I'm a counselor, and then I want to keep this professional. But I did want to just be very honest, based on the facts. This is not about hate, but facts. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll be putting out another one very soon where we discuss the raw truth. You have a good day.